Growing scandals surrounding Republican Congressman Matt Gaetz. He's now facing a House Ethics Committee probe as the federal investigation into allegations of sex trafficking appears to be widening. Well, Sarah, you have argued dozens of child porn cases and cases involving transportation of minors for sex in the federal system. So what type of legal ramification is Gaetz potentially facing here if charges are filed? And would you also advise someone facing these kind of allegations to do as much talking as Gaetz has been doing?
Right. So, here's the deal with Gaetz. He can talk Trump, but he can't talk himself out of this situation because it's way beyond politics. He is potentially on the hook for violations of the Mann Act, which is the federal law that prohibits the transportation of any individual across state lines for the purposes of sexual activity. And that can be an individual of any age. So the question is going to become whether the prosecutors can prove beyond a reasonable doubt through the witness testimony of these women that they're interviewing right now and through financial records such as those Venmo receipts, that these women were taken on this Bahamas trip that we read about in the New York Times reporting for the purposes of having sexual activity with Gaetz and other men that were there. And if that's the case, and it can be traced to Gaetz, that Gaetz was responsible or caused their transportation or paid for their travel, then he's in big trouble and he's facing a maximum of 10 years for each count of that violation. If those women were minors at the time of the sexual activity, then he's facing a mandatory minimum of 10 years for each count. And, the issue here is that there's this parallel investigation with the House Ethics Committee and the DOJ. But to some extent, that the House Ethics Committee investigation is going to be basically it's going to be stayed because generally the DOJ doesn't like a simultaneous investigation going on with their investigation. One is about whether he committed a crime. The other is about whether he's politically fit to serve in office. And so with respect to this problem that you mentioned, he should, but he cannot shut up. And the issue here is I think his arrogance gets in the way of his ability to exercise his Fifth Amendment right to remain silent. I mean, he should not be saying a word. And we saw him at a Trump resort at a women's event. Ironically, he's being looked at for misconduct, sexual misconduct with women, and he's showing up to a women's event and making these statements, trying to exonerate himself. It's a big mistake, and I think he's looking at some major trouble because I just want to add one more thing.
Yeah, we got to go real quick, Sarah.
Okay, Joel Greenberg, his buddy, would not have pled or would not have indicated that he's pleading guilty, but for the fact that he's cooperating. He has already been cooperating. So Gaetz has some problems.